This is Damon Fordham, adjunct professor of history at Charleston Southern University in the Citadel, and I'm here to talk to you about the reality of something that's been troubling many people for the last 100 or so years, the idea of black unity. Now, throughout the lives of your average African American, you're going to hear people say things about, oh, well, black people can't get together to save their lives. Black people like crabs in a barrel. We can't unite for nothing, etc., etc., and so forth. And I want to tell you the truth about that matter, okay? You see, most people only know what they have been told. And from the days of slavery onward, many African Americans have been told, sometimes even by their own parents, that it was impossible for them to come together and form in unity. And as Malcolm X himself said in one of his final speeches at Ford Auditorium in Detroit, Michigan on February the 14th, 1965, that once you get an idea like that into you, when it's time for you to come together and unite, you will believe that it's so impossible that you won't even try to do so. You see, things like that were taught to many of our ancestors during the slavery era to prevent them from uniting, because if they united, you would have things like slave rebellions, which was bad for the cheap labor that they were trying to get in those days. And ever since then, unfortunately, that idea has taken hold, and many African Americans came to believe it themselves, and worst of all, preached that to their own children. So the children grow up believing that, and when it's time for them to get together, many of them don't think it's possible. You even have false stories like this nonsense about this Willie Lynch letter about some phony slave master named Willie Lynch, who was supposed to have written this letter to say to keep them divided forever by dividing the young from the old, the light versus the dark, etc., and so forth. Well, the truth about that matter was that it was written in the 1970s by a Dr. Kwabena Ashanti over at North Carolina Central University. Very recently, a good friend of mine, Professor Manu Ampin, over at Merritt College in Oakland, California, he recently discovered that fact. But the fact of the matter is this. Ladies and gentlemen, if black people were the most disunited and disorganized people on this earth, here's something to consider. World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, the Cold War, the Korean War, the nuclear bombs and nuclear explosions and all of that, those were things of great disunity, weren't they? Did black people start any of that? No. Those things that you see in the civil wars around the world make what happens among African Americans look like kindergarten at recess, in all honesty. Now, that's not to say that our slate is completely clean, because, you had warfare in Africa, from the beginning of time, just as you had warfare anywhere from the beginning of time. And also think about this. If it was so impossible for black people to unite, why did Marcus Garvey have membership in the millions and hundred thousands back in the 1920s? And why did over 250,000 people follow A. Philip Randolph, John Lewis, and Martin Luther King to the Washington Monument back in 1963 to march for jobs, peace, and freedom? And how is it that so many people got together, black and white, I might add, to elect President Barack Obama for 2 terms? So the fact of the matter is this, folks. It's important. This is why reading is important. Reading, such as the example I gave you with Malcolm X, The Final Speeches, and other such books, it takes your mind beyond what you are told. Because, see, the average person only knows what they are told. And if what you are told all your life is negative, you will be in a mess. So your best place to go is your public library, so you can get books on a wide variety of subjects, and your mind can go to places where your body won't, and thus you will become a better and well-informed person, because as Martin Luther King said in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? He said that when you go into battle with your adversary, you must be as armed with knowledge as they. So go on to the library and constructive things and arm yourself with knowledge so you can do better in your life and leave destructive myths behind. This is Damon Fordham.